All right, everybody. So if there is a title that can have automation trailblazer, that would be Jason Huggins. Imagine a world where testing meets the future. Robotics, talking about innovation in the world of automation, open source innovation, right? That's Jason Huggins' work in the last few decades. One of the things that stood out for me when I read about Jason's bio, he was the creator of Tapster Robotics in 2015. And how many of you have heard about Selenium or Appium? I'm sure you all have used it, but Jason didn't only use it, he created it. He's the founder of Selenium and Appium, which was a complete revolution in the world of automation, and I feel like that was a global change that we were able to bring in the world of automation. So thank you, Jason, for all what you do. The other thing that really impressed me that he was also a part of President Obama's team in 2013 for TechSurge, where he actually helped fix HealthCare.gov website. So I'm glad that from his journey from an automation engineer at Google, he's now a CTO of Sauce Labs.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I started it, but I was the CTO, but
yes.
I left, right?
Yes. So thank you.
All right.
You're awesome. You are an inspiration for a lot of us.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. All right. Woo-hoo. All right. That was a great intro, and now you get to see it in slide form. I'll try to make this faster because you just heard it, right? Okay. So the mild ambition of my talk, testing on 7 billion devices, a modest proposal, right? So I've got some big plans. You could follow me. I had it changed my little social to Blue Sky, so that's me on Blue Sky, hugs.bsky.social, and then tapster.io is my website. So how did we get here? All right, let's speed run it again. So 2004, started the Selenium project. Don't have to go over that, right? So 2008, 4 years later, started Sauce Labs, which was basically Selenium in the cloud. And that was right around when cloud computing was a brand new phrase. And it was weird that we spent basically a year and a half, probably more than that, just explaining what cloud computing was to venture capitalists. No one understood what it was. And fast forwarding to the end, I think vibe coding as a phrase is as genius of a marketing word now as cloud computing was in 2008. So anyway, that's one talk you could just give right on that, right? Anyway, 2008, Sauce Labs. So 2012, while I was CTO at Sauce Labs, we created the Appium project. That was for a particular client. I think I can disclose this now. Salesforce was trying to figure out how to test their iPad app or something like that. And then they were like, how do we do this? And so Appium came out of that, and they were the first user of it. Fast forwarding, going faster. 2015, I formally left Sauce and started my own robotics company, Tapster. And I could again give the ideas for these talks could go fractal. I could go into all the reasons for this. But one of the things for years, the way I would explain Selenium specifically to media or press, same thing, or VCs or my family at Thanksgiving, because it's hard to imagine browsers in the cloud running on just virtual machines. I would say Selenium is like a robot. You would tell it to open a page, you would tell it to type this words into a field, click these buttons, like how you would explain to a robot, do these things. That's it. And so the idea behind, and after so many times saying, oh, it's like a robot, it'd be kind of funny. It was almost like an art project. I wonder if I could actually build a robot that could run a Selenium test, but do it in reality. So sometimes I call this the reverse Tron, old school movie reference, but the gist of that movie was the humans got sucked into a video game, and I call this the reverse Tron, where I'm taking things like Selenium, a robot trapped inside a computer, and I'm bringing it out. That's the Disney idea of that. A dystopian version of that would be like I'm creating Skynet and the Terminator, or actually Skynet with Sauce Labs, and then the Terminator is whatever. Anyway, again, different movie-themed versions of this talk, but that was 2015 in Tapster. So this was the very first robot. There's a lot of little interesting Easter eggs in here. It's Lego compatible, laser cut basswood. There's actually some Lego parts in here. This is actually a spin-off from an art project. Again, I can't really go into all that, but Bitbeam was the Lego compatible thing, this toy construction kit that I made. And video of that got posted, and then this is basically the second version of that robot because this version was very slow. And as you all know, everyone hates slow tests, right? So this was a very slow Cartesian robot thing sped it up. Someone gave me the tip that Delta robots, just like in cars, you've got cars and pickup trucks, and there's different archetypes of cars. In robots, you have archetypes of robots. You have Cartesian robots, this is an example of it, like laser cutters would be an example. 3D printers, they often look like this. But this is a Delta robot. There's another one that probably when you think of a robot like welding a car door in like a factory, that's probably like a 6 or 7 axis articulated arm. There's various different words for it, but word on the street is Delta robots are the fastest, and if you're making a robot play Angry Birds, you want it to go as fast as possible, right? This also is my hello world for a robot, can it play Angry Birds? If it can do that, then I'll ship it, right? And again, at the time, even though it says Sauce Labs, a little confusing, there was like an overlap when this was like my just hobby at Sauce, and then it became, at some point it got into a different path, right? Fast forward a couple years, this is come a long way from the crazy wood version. This is like the latest version of what we had. This is not a sales pitch for robots, so I'll just skip through here. Again, hello world, Angry Birds, now on a tablet. Still, I can't remember if I had to keep recording until I got 3 stars. I can't remember. I think this was the hype reel. Right, okay, yeah, so I got 3 stars, so that's pretty good. I think over time, though, they've dumbed down the game. It's a lot easier to get 3 stars. Whatever. The idea behind all this stuff was that you're distilling down testing to a finger and an eyeball. And actually, you can kind of riff on this, on why anytime there's a new platform, manual testing actually ends up being the way those platforms get tested, is because the automation, it takes a while to make a robotic finger, and it takes a while to make a robotic eyeball that can look at it and integrate it. And so what happens is it's always a lagging indicator of the success of a platform. Eventually, the automation tools will come along. But until then, humans have the better fingers and the better eyeballs, and so that's what it is. And so Tapster was kind of like taking that distilled essence of what a person does and boiling it down into just literally a finger and an eyeball, right? And so just like case in point, right? iPhone and Android came out 2007, 2008, but Appium was in like 2011, 2012, right? So there was a several years gap where they were clearly amazing platforms. The automation tools, I mean, granted, there were some other automation tools there, but Appium came on the scene years ago. So if you ever had dreams of creating an automation tool, like let's say you're super into VR goggles or something like that, like, yes, it's now, but don't worry, you've got time, because there's literally years to wait. Again, I got theories on all that stuff. But what happens, fast forwarding, trying to, this is the most recent robot, which has no moving parts. It's a Raspberry Pi Zero, and it plugs into the phone. The big thing that I kind of realized, and this was based on feedback from other users, is that Raspberry Pi, running Linux, can act as a virtual robot. It can use something called, again, this isn't gory technical details in this, but it uses something called the USB protocol, USB gadget protocol. It acts as a fake stylus, mouse, or keyboard, and that's over the USB Go little adapter thing, plugs into the phone, and it can do that. And this was interesting because between when I started making the robots, 2011 or so, until about 2019, literally the only way, this is an Android phone, but the only way you could automate an iPhone was literally with a robot. And I got this information from somebody, I won't name them so they don't get in trouble. They had, when they were at Apple, they had access to the secret APIs that you could automate all this stuff. But then when they left Apple to go do their own startup, the first thing they did was buy a robot, because they're like, well, we don't have the APIs, so we have to do it this crazy contraption. We need one of your crazy contraptions. But that ended in 2019 with iOS 13, when Apple rolled out accessibility mode, where you could plug in a mouse and keyboard and drive the phone that way. Once that happened, the logic for needing a robot was gone. So there was a window of opportunity for me between 2007 until 2019 where actually I could credibly say to experienced robots, sorry, but you actually need to do this crazy stuff. But that changed, right? So now I don't even need the moving parts. You could use a USB keyboard. You could do that. So, but there's this trend line now where I'm started a robotics company, and now I'm not making robots. I am at a decision point where, where I either, if I want to stay in robotics, I have to maybe pick a different thing. So for a while, I was thinking like, oh, maybe I make robots that can make a burrito for you or something else, like switching, going out of testing. Or do I stay in the testing world, and then maybe my next move is I'm not making robots anymore, but I'm doing something there, right? So it's kind of a decision point. Similar thing of like if you were a newspaper 10 years ago, you have to decide whether are you in the paper distribution business or in the news dissemination business. And if you're in the news dissemination business, you probably should have gotten the memo sooner that you need to like get rid of your trucks and newsstands, right? But a lot of newspapers didn't get that memo. Anyway, this is the latest. That's the kind of a different version of the spin on this. And this is the thing. Again, not a sales pitch for this thing, but that's the guts inside. There's a Raspberry Pi 4. There's a video capture thing. It's fun. But what does this mean, right? No more robots, potentially. So this really, the last couple of years, I've been on kind of a vision quest of like, oh God, what do I do if I'm running a robotics company and I don't make robots anymore? Literally, what do I do? So that was kind of this process. And I'll tell you what I came up with. Anyway, but there's a flashback. One of the things also mentioned in the bio. Worked on HealthCare.gov. I got pulled in. Obama mentioned launched this like tech surge in mid-October. I told a couple people the story yesterday, but people didn't realize that it launched on October 1st, or don't people remember? But there was also a government shutdown. So people didn't realize publicly that for 3 weeks that the site was actually busted because the main headline was shutdown, right? As soon as the shutdown ended, like 2.5 weeks later, the top headline was like, oh yeah, that thing, it's totally not working, right? Massive panic inside. Yeah, massive wounds to my ego. I did not get to be on the cover here. But Paul Smith, this guy, he's the one who called me. He was on site for like a week or two and said, oh, hey, we need help with the testing. Again, I could give actually, I've given a talk on all this, but like why that happened, the short version of that was they were now in a crisis and they needed to push to production as fast as they could. And the problem was, even inside the crisis, there was a contractor with the testing contract, and they had a process and it was all manual testing, and it required 3 days of manual testing, manual QA, before they could do a push to production. So also this guy, Jeffrey Zients, which I can't remember what his role is, but he, I think, was chief of staff with Biden, I think, maybe, but at the time, he was just a dude. Anyway, no, so he had, I apologize, Jeffrey, you actually had a formal title. Where am I going with this? He promised the world, Jeffrey Zients did, that we're gonna have it fixed in 30 days. So you have this problem, you have a math equation problem now. You've got 30 days, and then divide by 3, that means you can only push to production, by doing the math right, 10 times in the month that they promised. So there was this idea like, oh hey, what if we automated stuff and got the delivery process down to 1 day? Wouldn't that be a miracle? Then we'd have 30 shots on goal, not 10. That was the thought. And like, okay, that means automation. Who do we know in automation? And then they called me, whatever. But it was in the middle, and this is basically like, I didn't get to be on the cover at time, so this is like the one little bit of proof. Although this URL doesn't exist anymore, so it's only like, it's not even an archive, it's like literally just a file on my computer, whatever. But Paul was on Chris Hayes and put this screenshot. So this is like actual proof that I'm sitting next to the CTO of America. Like I was really there, I swear. Anyway, one of the things though in that Time article, this thing is interesting. I'm not gonna read all the text, just the pull out. This really happens. So in the middle of that crazy firefight, nobody could even tell, here's the quote, nobody could even tell us if the system was up as we were sitting there in the Oval Office, except by taking out our laptops and trying to go on it. So can you imagine how bonkers this whole thing is? Where literally, like all the king's horses and all the king's men, they were all lying, none of it worked, so the only way to get any truth on the ground reality was to literally, in the freaking Oval Office, open a laptop and go, HealthCare.gov. Also, a crazy parallel to that was every time CNN would do a story on it, they would also like, let's go live to reporter on the street. And like, we're going to the website and like, oh, it's down. And then we'd be like watching like, oh, shoot, you know, I guess it's down, right? Because whole craziness there. They eventually got, yeah, sorry, my talk is fractal. I'm trying to like, I need an editor. They fixed it, right? But there's one story that was near and dear to my heart. Again, these are things that'll maybe go in the book, but like this story never really got into any media. But Representative Langford in this is the Oversight Committee, and Todd Park is the CTO of America. So this guy, they called him in while in the middle of the burning crater of the entire, like in the middle of all of this, right? They pulled him in, and they just grill Todd Park about the whole thing. And while Representative, I think he's now Senator Lankford, right? While he is waiting for his turn to talk to Todd Park, he's on HealthCare.gov on an iPad, which was not officially supported and not in the requirements. I don't think even existed when they wrote the requirements doc. He's on there clicking the create account button, like for an hour, and then that's his first thing out of his mouth, like, okay, Todd, sorry, Mr. Park, blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I'm on the website, and I'm just not, it doesn't work. Whole story about that. But the funny thing was, that actually was a real, like, he was providing actual awesome oversight, because after that, we kind of huddled, like, yeah, that guy, what a jerk, he's holding it wrong. And then someone was looking at the dashboard, like, no, actually, all of our traffic stops at create login, but some people are getting through. What's going on? Turns out there was a corrupted cookie that was put into the system like a couple of days before. And so if you had already had the cookie, like because you went on it a week before, you were fine. But if you were a brand new user, you got the bad cookie, and that bad cookie set like the state you were going to get routed to. And there was a handoff that didn't work and blah, blah, blah. And so it was a JavaScript error. This effectively was static HTML. I think what the fancy word is, like, it would inflate the page and to like make all the buttons active. That was broken. So you could see it, but nothing worked. Anyway, so this triggered a 24-hour cycle where we actually reproduced the bug, spun it up on a couple of different browsers on a name your cloud company of choice that you could do that on all the different browsers, and verified that it was a bug, ran up the flagpole, and the deadline was the president was giving a talk in the Rose Garden, and he didn't do this every day, so it was like maybe once a week, once every other week, and we knew there was going to be a huge spike in traffic. Well, what do you know, the next day, this thing was fixed, and there was a record number of people who could create an account because the button is no longer broken, right? And it was, again, like all of this technology, and at the time when I was plugged into this whole system, I was working on some crazy other stuff, and then I realized, oh my God, it's literally as simple as going to an iPad and clicking a button. That's it. And like sometimes I think like my career is like, I can't believe I've spent more than 20 years now. You would think buttons would be a solved problem by now. And literally my entire career you could put on my tombstone, like he clicked buttons, right? Or he makes the thing that clicks the buttons. And somehow it's still like that wasn't like just done in a day, right? Anyway, got this all thinking of like, if I'm making robots that are not robots anymore, and then there was this thing that I kind of wish I had on that 2013 thing, just like, first principles, oh my gosh, what an existential crisis, whatever you want to call it, very dramatic turning point of what I should be working on next. And it really came down to, okay, in that moment, like with the Oval Office or Lankford or whatever, you kind of just like want to have we can go talk about how complicated Selenium tests are, whether you need them at all or whatever, but the reality is there's like if it's not you, it's going to be Representative Lankford, no, Senator Lankford, who's going to be going on your site, clicking the button, and calling you in the oversight committee. Like it's as simple as that. Like just nail that, and then we can get all the other stuff, right? And if we aren't nailing this, then what are we doing, right? Anyway, so if you roll this up into my delusions of grandeur, like, oh wait, why not just one iPad in, where is he, Nebraska? Oklahoma? I can't remember. Anyway, why not any device anywhere, right? This also reminded me of some of the issues when I was at Sauce Labs, where we would have a data center in San Francisco, and people would show up in Europe saying, your site's slow. And I would have to explain to them, like, sorry, bring it up with Newton. It's the speed of light. Physics, I can't solve the latency issue. You could solve that by putting a data center near users, which you do, but at some point, not every company who does the cloud stuff can put a data center literally in every location. I always go through my spin the wheel on what country I should use as an example, but let's just say you're in Australia. That connection to a data center in San Francisco would be a bummer. It would be nice if there was a data center in Australia, right? But you can kind of roll this out to everywhere. Anyway. So there's this idea that, again, this is kind of an old reference. It's an old meme, but it checks out. Uber for testing. It's kind of probably if I was pitching to Y Combinator, this is kind of like the thing that I'm going to go for. But I also want to respect the roots of Selenium and Appium, the community, and make it all like granola and open source and awesome, right? Like Portland approved kind of a thing, right? So I'm actually going to just stop talking for a moment and actually show you a demo. And God help us, this is a live demo, and I hope no one load tests this thing, right? So this is also, I could give a whole talk on, this was vibe coded. This did not exist a week ago, and I didn't actually write any code. This was all lovable. Again, it's kind of an ad for them, but this was all just me telling the thing what I want, and it made all of this, right? So the usability, I also have this theory that if you're going to make a startup or a website or whatever, you are going to succeed or fail, or actually success is if you can boil it down into a field and a button. So Twitter, Facebook, Google, literally a text field and then a button. If you can boil down whatever you're trying to do into that, you're onto something, right? Or if you haven't, keep going on it. So actually the very first prompt was this thing, like, hey, give me a global graph of, I'm gonna do 7 billion phones and show me a graph of like live nodes running tests and all this stuff like that. So this was the first page that the AI built for me. Again, it's dummy data. So this site is live, but this isn't real. There aren't 847 active nodes. This is like mock data, right? But imagine that, like, if I click on this, like, oh, hey, a Samsung Galaxy in Berlin is testing LinkedIn.com right now. Or, oh, hey, in the middle of the, I don't know what C that is. What's to the left of, let's find something else. In Australia, right? An iPad Air is testing Facebook.com. Like, this is live, right? This is the idea, right? But this was, I think, after a day or two, I realized, like, this is a little too complicated. So boiling it down into the field or button. Again, this is all mock stuff, but you could have a prompt. And this is where you would probably enter some kind of a thing. I want to test a site on a particular browser in a particular city. You might not care about the city because you just want to test it, period. So maybe just leave that out and just say GitHub on whatever. Or you can enter like, HealthCare.gov on everything you got, right? Just whatever, right? You click that, and again, this is all fake, but it shows you what the process would be. This is probably like the Uber workflow where like I'm now matching you to your driver, right? So it finds a node on the network, runs the test, and then boom, you get the results. So again, this is probably standard fare for like, okay, this is kind of boring. This is what Sauce and Browser Stack and Lambda does, whatever, right? But the idea is that this is actually a social network of random people. Anybody, literally anybody, could, if you get the software, it'll all be open source, and you can just start running a node. You can set up a cloud machine and just do it, right? So it'll be as open source as Selenium, Selenium Grid, Appium, whatever. The idea would be, eventually, it's not just individuals, but also organizations would sign up to be an operator, right? If I click on a random person here, you have a profile, you've got followers and stuff like that. There's a certain level of, like, it's not just technical, there's also a social, there's a lot of, stranger danger to this idea. It's as crazy as getting in a stranger's car, staying at a stranger's house, or having a stranger deliver your groceries, right? So these technical systems of owning a network are, you can do that, but you also have the stranger danger aspect of like, what am I doing? So in this case, the risk goes both ways. If I'm a normal corporation and I want to run a test on an iPhone in Nebraska, how do I trust that phone actually is going to do it and not muck with the data, right? Conversely, is that the right phrase? If you are the owner of a phone, what's to keep? I mean, this is the thing I would absolutely guaranteed first do if I was on the network and I could randomly control a phone in Nebraska. The first thing I would do is try to call 911. That was absolutely the first thing I would do. I can either confirm or deny that if you did that in an Apple store, it doesn't work. There's reasons, but if you're going to have phones on the network, you'd have to lock it down. And the weird thing about phones is that regardless, even if there's no SIM chip, they're required by law to be able to call 911. So that gets really interesting. Start going on a really vision quest of like, oh, well then whatever I'm doing here, all the phones need to be in Faraday cages. How do I build a Faraday cage? Whatever. There's all kinds of rabbit holes you can kind of go down. But taking the big picture on the network, you have operators. The operators have, like this particular person, Michael Rodriguez, has 2 nodes on the network. You can click on the nodes. They're in New York. And they all get randomly assigned a name. You can get some stats, like this cheerful blue dolphin. It'll be like some generated name. Has run 1,200 checks on the system, uptime, whatever. But one of the things, though, I think from the stranger danger, like trust aspect of it, is that you probably are only going to run it on trustable, verifiable operators. There's probably going to be some process to verify Michael Rodriguez as an actual. There's probably going to be some background check. If you think of it the same way, like this hotel just gave me access to a room. I could have totally trashed it. I might still trash it, right? Who knows, right? But there's checks and balances on. Well, if you do that, you will pay, right? There's probably a version of that like some deposit version of this, right? So you have a node, and then each node runs checks. So what I'm calling any test, anything that you do on the system is a check. And so this is, I think, my favorite page. Actually, no, sorry. This is, this is the downside to a live, there we go. Okay, this is the thing I always wanted at Sauce Labs. This is a live view of the network, not the global view, but like literally if you go to like a really high-end sports bar where you've got all the games going on simultaneously, all at once, this is basically like that, right? You can see all the different things. You could also then filter it. I'm just jumping around here. Again, this is all fake data, but eventually this will be real, so you could get a global view of this. Of course, you also think like, oh my God, I'm a company running tests. I don't want everyone to see my stuff. Then there's probably going to be a filter where you're only running your stuff on, like you toggle it to be private, you're running it in a private version of this whole thing. So it's not, there's kind of like total anarchy and craziness version of this, but then there's a way to filter it to sanity, right? But this is kind of this view, and also to go really crazy, right? Like I wanted just to see the thing, right? We could also see the list view of various stuff. Again, all this mock data doesn't actually go to the right thing. It's not like linked up, but get all the results. That's basically the thing that I want to exist. And the weird thing about this is no one has asked me to build it. So there's this, what got me stuck for a long time was, okay, so I started Sauce. This is effectively like this open source crazy anarchy version of Sauce Labs, Browser Stack, and Lambda. So if that exists, why do it again? Like, who am I? Like, this is ridiculous. The other thought process this was, if I did something like Sauce Labs again, if you're going to stand up a credible, minimal, viable cloud, right? You probably need some number of phones. And so you kind of do the quick math. If you need, like, I don't know, a reasonably starter cloud would be like 2,000 phones, right? So if you think like high-end, no one's going to, well, whatever. You get the new iPhones, 2,000 phones. That's $2 million that I don't have, and then I would have to like ask for an investor, like, give me $2 million so I can give it straight to Apple. So the meditation for a lot of this stuff was, how can I get 2,000 phones without buying 2,000 phones? And the answer was that epiphany of like, don't buy 2,000 phones. So like create Uber for testing, and then all of this stuff kind of like came out of that. And yet no one's really asked for this. And so I kind of got to a point where I've really been, there's so many text files on my computer about just planning or all of this stuff. The Faraday cages that you might need, the whatever, all this stuff. And I think I'm at the point where I just want to just freaking make it. And if only 3 people use it, like I'll be happy. Also, the scary thing is that this was like I didn't write a line of code for this thing. This was all just the conversation with me and the AI in the last week. So things have gotten scary good. But on the flip side, before this really goes live, someone, me or whoever I ask, is going to have to go through line by line to figure out like. There's the stranger danger of just like matching you up with cars. There's also like, what the heck did it create? What does the code look like behind the scenes, right? So that's going to have to have a pretty good audit there. And you can't exactly, this becomes a kind of interesting question of like, can you trust the AI to test its own code? Maybe, probably, yes, right? I'll just ask it, like, make it secure now. And it's like, oh, done, right? Like, okay, but did you? Right. Maybe you play 2 AIs off each other who maybe don't like each other, whatever. But this is the job now. I'm literally I had an idea, and here's this thing. Behind the scenes, the other thing that's kind of cool about this is that I'm using a particular technology and protocol called Nostr. A lot of people haven't heard it. It started as a kind of Twitter clone, but it's a lot of cool tech behind the scenes. I'm going to, go back to my slideshow here. Nostr is this protocol, and the first kind of killer app for it was like a Twitter-like clone. But the idea about it is that it's just JSON over WebSockets. And this was, and then there's these things called Nostr improvement proposals, and there's like 100 of them. And one of them is NIP 89 and NIP 90 called data vending machines. So imagine having. This is where kind of like the Uber for testing might be, you could build it on top of this. This was just an example when I'm kind of like prototyping the idea of this talking to a network to ask me to do a thing for me. This was a direct message on a Noster client called Primal. Doesn't matter. You can use any different client. And I'm talking to an AI bot that's you can send it a little bit of money, like a penny or two, and it'll do an AI request for you. And so I told it, I think, make me, I chose from menu option 7, an image of a robot tapping buttons on phones. And it costs 70 sats, which translates to a couple of pennies. And over the Bitcoin Lightning Network, but this is not a Bitcoin talk. So anyway, but I think it's a super killer app for that, and that's going to be whatever. And it did the AI thing for me, right? So instead of this, maybe you could swap out and do an image request. Instead, say, hey, test HealthCare.gov for me on an iPhone, and so you could have I could have prototyped it just as basically a direct message bot. But then the bigger ideas, the website and the global graph and all that stuff like that kind of came from that. But this was like the initial prototypes for this. Anyway, so I'm out of time. I got to go to a bonus round here for you. What I can do in 30 seconds. Last summer, I asked, this is my hello world for the test for an AI. So if a hello world, the acid test for a robot is, can it play Angry Birds? My acid test for an AI, any AI, do this. I want everyone to do this. Like, give it a calculator and say, find one and click it, right? Last summer, ChatGPT could not do it, could not find the one, right? So, I've only got 3 seconds on my talk here. You know how crazy things have changed between then and now? Let me show you what happens. I just ran this demo this morning, June 2025, literally 2 hours ago. I ask it, okay, find one and highlight it, right? And it's still wrong. So the humans still have some time. But that's the default ChatGPT version. So it's kind of, there's a different demo. This is the, again, a different talk for the other day. This is the art project that Tapster itself was a spinoff from. This is the software version. This is the live site. But right now it just shows a clock. And I gave ChatGPT, same thing this morning, a screenshot of pinthing.com saying, hey, just tell me what you see. Do you see a clock? And what time is shown? And then give me the answer in JSON. And it wrote a 3D grid of red blocks arranged. This is just straight up default ChatGPT. Grid of 3D blocks arranged on a pink base forming the number 617 in a digital clock style. Mind blown, right? And is a clock true? Time 617. So that's like goosebumps level, like holy crap. At the same time, the same default thing said, here's your number one. So we still have some work to do, but it's like crazy good. I have a hunch that the future though, I have to go and make, literally after this call, or after this talk, I have to go reserve the name for all this on all the places they can use. But Selenium was, right, and then Appium was Selenium for apps, and now I'm kind of going with, I think, Vibium trademark, whatever hashtag. This will be a real thing, but it's basically nothing. It's like, which AI do you want to just send the request to? And that was literally my interaction here was, just send it off to the thing and give me your answer. That's what Vibium will probably do. Also, the t-shirt just makes itself, vibe.check, is like, it's just kind of awesome. That has to exist all by itself. So there's kind of a different spin on this. If you're like a total nerd, geeky kind of person, you'll be writing your test stuff like this. But if you're the chief of staff, oh wait, sorry, I'm jumping around here, and you're in the middle of the Oval Office, your front ends will be like this, where you're just like HealthCare.gov and all the things. Two different ways to look at it, but either way, behind the scenes, it'll be, the AI doing it. But the other kind of big part of this is everyone is so focused on the front end AI part of it. The thing that AI can't do is tell you if it really works on a real phone in a real location on a real network, right? So while everyone is falling over themselves on the AI's part, and really, it's all just OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, if they're in the room, yeah, congratulations, you win, but everyone else is living in their world. I'm working on this open source actual infrastructure thing because the AIs at some point will have to run it on a real phone somewhere real. An AI can lie to you, but does that actually work in the real world? That's the thing that I'm working on. And make it all open source and awesome and everything, everyone can build a company on top of it, right? So anyway, that is my deal. and where I was required to show this, right? So, you're supposed to, I think, get your camera, scan the QR code, say nice things, and then and do that throughout the day, right?
Thank you, Jason. This is really, really good. Big round of applause. All right, now we have some Q&A time. Who wants to go first?
We have 5 minutes for QA?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's supposed to be 15, I apologize. Hey.
Nice talk, Jason. I followed you for years. It's nice to virtually meet you. I make a distinction between checking and testing. And a check is quick and confirmatory, and you can tell a computer to assert. What is it that you're asserting on with your new, I saw a node called checks.
Yes.
But don't you have to give it what you want it to assert on? You have to give it an assertion?
So the first minimal viable product version of this, also I like dark mode. That was a nice little innovation there. Minimal, like screenshot and 200 HTTP status code 200. That's almost implied in the very first version of this. Is it an active site, and can it get a screenshot that's like not blank? I think that's like the built-in assumption here. And I think just limiting the scope of the project to that, but if it's just that, and there's no AI, it's just literally pull out website and maybe location, we could focus on building out the network of all the nodes and the safety of that and the stranger danger and the trust metrics and validation, all of that stuff. Like completely skipping checking versus testing and how deep do you go and the nuance of like, does this work, and what's the definition of work, all those things. I have to build out like the core infrastructure and then kind of come back to how far can you go. This feels like the modern, I think where you're going with this feels like the modern argument at the bar about record playback tools versus writing codes for real, where the record playback tools are great if you're just like, we actually talked about this on the Selenium project, that maybe we should have made the Selenium IDE literally limit you to 10 steps. When as soon as you get to 11, it says, hey, escape patch, your training wheels are off now, or they're on, but like you have to go somewhere else now. There's probably, I think we're in the middle of the hype curve, right? Or actually at the top of the hype curve, where this stuff can do anything and everything. And I think the reality is if your workflow was like 50 steps long, one, it shouldn't have been 50 steps long, but then two, the AI is gonna it'll get kind of off the rails pretty quickly. But if you really limit it to kind of like the pin thing test, like, hey, go to this one page, what do you see? And lead the witness a little bit, like, do you see a clock? And maybe ask it in such a way that, like, don't tell it what you're looking for so it doesn't lie to you. Really, really keep it simple. I'm not as good as you and other people in the room about writing articles and books and all this stuff like that, but there's an argument to be made that if you had a 10-step workflow, you should find some way to slice that up into 10 steps and just test that last step in isolation. There's many reasons why I use the word check. It's Michael Bolton approved, for one. But then also fun fact, no one knows this, but I was arguing in the email where I accidentally named Selenium, the rest of the emails where I was arguing to Brett Petticord, who created the Whitewater project. Anyway, fun footnotes to history, but I was arguing that the Selenium project, we should have called it Check Engine. That I was lobbying for that to be the name of the project. It's an engine that checks things. It's a check engine light. It's great, right? Where was I going with this? Oh, right, but the other thing was if you had a 10-step workflow, and I think it's dangerous to give an AI all 10 steps, go from homepage all the way to the other thing. I think what you have to do is really get good about setting up your system so there's checkpoints, so you have effectively saved the state. And you can probably do this in a virtual machine a lot easier. It's a lot easier than 20 years ago. Literally save the state of a virtual machine where you got the workflow to a certain point, a checkpoint, right? And then at checkpoint number 9, then give it to the AI and say, get to the end, get to the next step and do that. But I'm kind of still assuming that it's kind of like implied here, the humans are in the loop. I'm now the conductor, I'm the analyst, I am orchestrating these things. The job of a tester now becomes like you're this analyst, you're a conductor of an orchestra. And so the AI is going to try to test the 10-step thing. It's going to try to do exactly what you tell it to. But the weird thing is, like, the more you prompt it into, like, no, don't do this, but do this, whatever, like, you're like, I should have just written this in Python or something. It's ridiculous. But I would look forward to talking with you about this stuff, because, but really trying to keep it limited to like uptime check is the first version of this. Hey.
Next question.
Hey, Jason. A very proud moment to talk to you. Just a follow-up question on him and to what you were saying. So the whole problem from a QA perspective is not the checking of the checkpoint and it's reaching to that state. For example, in Carlos's talk, we have a very simple scenario where you add an item from the detail page, go to add to cart. But the actual check is at the checkout.
Yeah.
Amazon's retail website, I've been part of that, and there are hundreds of microservices that get called in a fraction of a second on the checkout page, especially on Prime Day. It's just mind-boggling. So the actual problem is not the 10th checkpoint.
Yeah.
It's getting to the 10th checkpoint.
Right.
And
right.
you cannot just have a state, saved somewhere
One
and
state,
just get there.
Right.
I work in a company where you just cannot go to the 10th checkpoint. You need to follow a bunch of steps to get there. And I think that's the problem that needs to be solved, because as part of UI testing, there are hundreds of tests that get run. It's somewhere in between something breaks, which makes the test fail, but the actual functionality is still good.
Right.
It's the 10th checkpoint which we want to test, which makes sense, but it's failed somewhere on the line.
Right.
Again, is there something that you have thought about it, or again, it's more of a feedback or a question that's
No, that's good. I think that's probably like the gnarliness of that question and that issue probably speak to the fact that there's probably hope for humanity that you still have a job, right? Because you get to work on that stuff, right? I think that there's, sorry, I'm going to be like sidestepping it by answering in a different way. Modern airlines, right? The way things get more automated, they still have this escape hatch where it's like, not literally, but like if the plane gets in a really, really horrible, gnarly situation, it says, it just nope, and then like, human, take the wheel, right? Of course, that's horrible because it's the worst possible moment where it solved everything that was like easy, even the hard stuff, and then it says, humans, you figured this out. You are descending at whatever. Like, when you're saying this thing, in my mind, it's the moral equivalent of an automated plane now descending at a vertical line to the ground, telling the human, help, right? So that will always be there, and I guess I'm arguing that this is kind of for like the things that can be automated, and there will always be the things that the humans are going to, whatever. Like even, or a different metaphor, the robots can build houses, right? But if the house was built wrong and the plumbing is now in conflict with the electrical, or someone now, like my house, so we want to upgrade from gas to electric, I can't just prompt an AI saying, like, replace my stove, right? At some point, or you could, and then it'll, like, blow up your house because it cut the gas line. It would be a good idea to bring in a human and say, before we do anything, let's reroute the thing, which is, like, kind of in the same universe of your thing of, like, I think there will always be room for the humans. I think the trick is recognizing when you're in that situation to not ask the robots to do it. But I guess I'm arguing that, kind of go back to that HealthCare.gov stuff. We were working on, we thought, all these kind of gnarly interactions, and then meanwhile, this representative was just hitting a button, and it was like this, like, I think it's like this, what do you call it, dichotomy between the fancy stuff we were doing and the simple thing. And like we just like lost track of literally just nailing the simple stuff and making sure that's really nailed down so they can so the humans can focus on the gnarly thing. I would argue then basically what you described probably doesn't run in this kind of system, right? That's probably the punchline too.
Thank you. We have time for just one last question. Who wants to go next? Who wins the lottery now? All right. Okay.
I have a bit of unrelated question. I'm sorry. This might derail you even more. So how many hugs did it take to create? It says created by Hugs.
Right. That, of course, it's all mock data. This created with James Wilson. Right? I'm going to have an actual, I'll be the first operator on the page. And so, like, created with Hugs, like, oh, Hugs the person, right? I think it'll be Hugs and Robots, maybe, or something. I don't know, whatever. But yeah.
I was wondering.
Oh, the other thing is also, like, full disclosure, I'm more of a fist bump person. I'm not actually a hugger. It's just my last name is Huggins. So that's it. Like, I'm not a creepy, weird, middle-aged white guy that goes by, like hugs everybody. Like, no, fist bumps. Totally fist bumps. So created with Hugs, that's just like, oh, I have to put the artist had a sign somewhere, right? Since like everything else was done by the AI, I just had to put my stamp on that. Yeah. Oh, the screenshot. It actually gets a little better. This was ChatGPT's handiwork last week. The prompt was. This was a robot that I desperately wanted. When I was a kid, the Omnibot 2000. I think there's a smaller version of it, like the Omnibot 5130 or something like that. Desperately wanted those robots, and so I told it, give me an image. Oh, there's multiple layered puns to this. Valet is like a classy way to drive your iPhone. That's like it's web driver, like haha, it's a driver. So like a robot in the car, whatever. But I said like a 80s cool style robot driving the thing. Yeah, the AIs basically did everything. So I had to like claim put my name on it somewhere, and so created with Hugs. You did derail me, thank you. Great. But
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. This is great.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thank
all
you.
your questions. Please give a huge round of applause to Jason.
Thank you.